So you can see now this virtual machines uh, have been replicated. When we actually started, the status was around 0%, and now the status is showing as protected. Uh, this protected status confirms that the data which was on the Hyper-V virtual machines have now been migrated, or not migrated, but I would say replicated to Azure. And for this replication, the storage account that it used was the one that we created. Okay, so if we go to the storage account, you shall see a lot of data which will be in the encrypted form. So I'll go to the storage that we created called AZ Migration Store. And within this storage account, we will go to the container. This has been recently renamed from blobs to containers. So I'll go to the containers and you'll see this data. Okay, so there are two containers, one for each virtual machine. So if I click on this container, you'll see this data. Okay, and if we go to VHT, and this is the VHT of 50 GB, which was replicated. Okay, you can see this VHT with this random name. And if we go back to another container, you'll see another VHT. And this VHT is of 40 GB. Okay, so this is a storage account which was used as a medium or as a repository to replicate the data. Now we are at the final stage now, wherein we will be actually migrating this virtual machines to Azure. Okay, so let's say if I want to migrate both of these virtual machines, I'll go back to my Azure Migrate project. I'll do a refresh. And what I'll do is I'll click on the migrate now. So when I click on migrate, it will ask you what type of virtual machines you want to migrate. So I can select these two virtual machines. And here there's an important option called shut down machines before migration to minimize data loss. So what this option means is when you click on yes, it will turn off this machines and then it will start the migration process. Okay, which is very good in terms of maintaining the data integrity, or I would say the same amount of data in the on-prem as well as Azure. And I'll click on the migrate button. Migration is started, but the first thing that it will do is it will turn off this virtual machine. So in few minutes, you would see that this virtual machines being powered off. And once this virtual machines are powered off, then the actual creation of virtual machine will take place in Azure. So we are waiting for this virtual machines to be turned off. And if you want to track the activities that are happening during this migration process is running, what you can do is you can go to the replicating service. You can click on this replicating service, and under jobs, you will find all those jobs that are running as a part of this Azure migration project. So there are two planned failovers which are happening, one for the web server and one for the AZ appliance. So let's click on the web server job to see what are the steps that it has performed. And there are total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. First is to prerequisites check for the planned failover, whether it's successful. Now it is at the step where it is shutting down the virtual machine, which is still in progress. See here, both of the virtual machines have been turned off now in the Hyper-V. So if we refresh this job, we would see this as successful. And in the preparing for failover and start failover, it will do all those pre-checks. And in the final step, it will start the replica virtual machine. So once this virtual machine has been completely failed over to Azure, it will start that virtual machine. So let's get back and let's go back to our virtual machines to see if those virtual machines have been created or not. So if we go to virtual machines, you can see here that it has already migrated one virtual machine, but the other virtual machine has not been migrated yet, which is AZ appliance. And we should see that machine also in some time. So I'll go back to my project. And if we go to this web server, you can see preparing for failover and the start failover is in progress. And what is the status for my AZ appliance? So AZ appliance is also getting created. So the failover is happening. Let's do a refresh to see. If not, let's refresh the entire Azure portal. No, the appliance is yet to be created. But the interesting part, I'm sorry, but this is not the actual migrated server. This is our Hyper-V host. Okay, the servers are not yet migrated. I was actually confused with the name. The server has not been migrated yet. Okay, because our server names are web server and AZ appliance. So you can see now it is getting created. This is our Hyper-V host. So I got confused here. So this is the first server which is now getting created, and we would see another server called AZ appliance in some time. So let's track the job now. Again, let's go back. Let's click on the AZ appliance. This is also in the stage of creating the machine. Let's do a refresh. And these are still getting created. And if you can see the status of this virtual machine or the source of the disk, the source of this virtual machine is getting created from a disk. And this disk is nothing but the disk which was replicated to a storage account. And rest of these virtual machines were created from a marketplace image. So this one thing will tell you how this virtual machine was created, whether that was created from any marketplace image or whether that was created from any sort of image. So if I do a refresh, you would see another virtual machine getting completely migrated because that is into the running state now. And the source is again disk. Let's do a refresh again. Let's track the job. So you can see the web server job is completed and the AZ appliances is still in progress when this has been completed. Okay. Let's get back to our virtual machines and let's do a refresh. This is still in the creating state. And one more thing, once those virtual machines are migrated completely to Azure, those virtual machines will not have any public IP address. So we'll see it will have a private IP address, which will be taken from the VNet, but they won't have any public IP address, number one. Number two is, if you go to the networking tab, you can check out the network interface name. This will be something random. If you go to the disks, this will be something random. Okay, you can see it has picked up any random name. So this is something which Microsoft needs to improve their product, because when the servers are migrated to Azure, we cannot expect the servers to have this random names, because that would put then administrators into trouble whenever they want to perform any sort of administration. So what we will do is we will assign a public IP address to this virtual machines. So I'll go to this appliance first, and I'll go to the networking. I'll click on the SNCC card, and then I'll go to IP configuration. And you see there's no public IP address. So let's click on this public IP address, and let's enable this public IP address and create one. So I'll click on this configure required settings. It will list if I have any free public IP addresses with me, but it says there are no public IP addresses found in West Europe. So let's create a new one, and I can give a name called AZ appliance hyphen PIP. Let's click on OK. Let's click on save. I'll perform the same things for my web server as well. So we'll go to virtual machines. Click on web server. It is still getting created, or there could be a possibility that the status has not been updated yet. But let's assign a public IP address first. I'll go to the web server network interface, IP configuration, and then click on public IP address, enable, create new, assign public server -pip. Click on OK, and click on save. So let's get back to now to our virtual machines. Let's refresh the entire portal to see if the status reflects as running or not. And there we go. So let's try to access this web server. If you see, the web servers which were on our Hyper-V host are turned off. They have no relations now with the migrated server in Azure. So I'll grab the public IP address of the server and we'll try to access that. So I'll try to access it outside of my VM. Okay, it's still not coming up. Let's do one thing. Let's go back to our virtual machines. And I'll try to see the boot diagnostics first. It's up and running. It's creating problem for us now. 40.113, 123.149. Let's check out some networking rules. And this has no network security group, so that should be fine. Let's try to access this Azure appliance, AZ appliance. So copy this. And it has came up. If you remember, we have to log in to this particular appliance with the local administrator of that particular server, and that was administrator.
Yes.
And you can see the name. Let's click on yes. And the server is now up and running. Let's go and check some configurations that we have done for this network interface card. Okay, whether we see the same configuration here or we have to tweak it. So I'll open my network properties of this particular server. Properties. And you can see the IP configurations have been rolled back, and Azure has taken its own IP configuration. That's one thing. You can see the appliance here. This virtual machine is not coming up. Let's try to do a restart of this virtual machine. Let's do a restart. Meanwhile, this application is coming up. I'll go to my Azure Migrate project, and if I go to my Azure Migrate project and do a refresh, the figures would change here. So in the migrated servers section, I would see 2 servers being successfully migrated. And there we go, migrated servers.
Yes.
Okay, so let's get back to our server. Yeah, so you can see this application has launched successfully now. So this is one server which we migrated, and there's another server which is not coming. It has came up, but it is not uh, giving us an RDP prompt. Let's try to access once again. Something seems to be wrong with this particular server. Let's check diagnostics. The virtual machine shows up here. Let's try to do one thing. Let's try to access this server locally from this server with the private IP address. MSTSC. Let's grab the IP address. So this is 4.5 and that is 4.4. Sorry. No, there seems to be some problem with the server itself, because when we try to access it locally, even that is not coming up. We need to check the services while logging
Okay.
into.
Can we?
Yeah.
So any extensions are also, is any issue from extensions?
No, I don't think so. There would be any issues from the extension because there are no extensions. Okay. So we'll have to troubleshoot that by logging from the serial console. And this type of issues you might come across in production environment as well, wherein you have to do a lot of troubleshooting analysis and so on. And I suspect that this serial console will work or not, because in some cases it requires a VM agent.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's wait. It says connected to the serial port of the VM. If no logon prompt is displayed, please enter. The server is pinging. It is not giving us an RDP prompt. And it is not giving us an serial console prompt as well, so that we can log in from serial console and try to do some troubleshooting. Let's try to do some run command. Let's go to run command now. And what we want to do, we want to do enable remote PowerShell, enable admin account, host IP configuration. I want to run something.
Last Last command can you perform, sir? Last one.
Set RDP remote port. Let's
Yes,
try
sir.
to, let's try to do this as well. Try to run this.
So now it's the VM have a public IP, right?
Yes, that VM has a public IP address, but it is not even giving us an RDP prompt from a private IP address.
So can we disable that public IP and try with a private IP?
No, that is not the case. Even if you're trying from private IP address within that network, it is not giving us a prompt. There is no problem of public IP address here.
It's interesting, sir.
Yeah. Can you see that we are able to access the network share as well for that particular server, but only there's a problem with the RDP. Let's try to connect via. Let's open computer management and try to access that particular server's computer management. So right click, connect to another computer. It's 172.16. IP address 14.4. 4. Perfect. We are connected to that particular server's computer management. Let's go to the services. And then we have to see for service. Remote desktop services is also running. Remote desktop OS configuration, RPC is running. Everything looks good here. So this is the service which is not running. This is the service which is not running. All looks good, at least from here. What could be the issue? So I'll go to serial console. Let's try to connect to the serial console once again. I'll mute yourself. Now I can think of one option is let's try to redeploy this machine to a different host and see what's the case. So I'm trying to redeploy now to a different host altogether. But overall, you must have now got an idea of how we can use Azure Migrate to perform migrations of different workloads, workloads like Hyper-V, workloads like VMware, workloads like physical servers. Do you have any
Yes,
questions?
sir.
Do you have any questions around this, Bala?
Yes, sir. I have a three questions. First one is in real time, lot of data available in that particular on-premises virtual machines and some database, all this thing. So that time it will take a lot of time on replication, right, sir?
Yes. So based on the amount of data you have, it will take that much of time. And it not only depends upon the data, but also depends on a lot on the bandwidth. Okay. Bala, can you mute yourself, please?
Yeah.
It depends a lot on your bandwidth as well. If you have a network link which has a good bandwidth, then it will help us to replicate that data faster. And in another case, if you don't have, if you don't want to replicate the data over the internet, you can also replicate the data with an express route circuit. But for that, you should be having express route with public or Microsoft peering, and then only the data would transfer from your internal express route circuit to your Azure storage account. And in case of site-to-site recovery, in case of site-to-site, and in case of, let's say, your express route with private peering, the data will still go over the internet.
Got it, sir. So we do not have any option because we are getting the issue the issue with um, some uh, failover issue, maybe some failover issue. Maybe can we failover back it to on premises?
So then you'll have to
Fail
use
back.
Azure Site Recovery. Failback is a feature which you can only use with Azure Site Recovery and not with Azure Migrate.
So this test failover and plant failover, so
Yes.
test failover won't be available in Azure Migrate.
So test failover is available in Azure Migrate. So if you go to your Azure Migrate project, so you can see here that test migrated servers. You can do a test failover of this servers as well in the Azure Migrate project. And then you can go for actual migration.
Okay. Yes, sir.
But
So
you
can
cannot,
we
but we cannot perform a failback. Sorry. So failback is a feature which is only available with the Azure Site Recovery. So Azure Site Recovery today, in comparison to Azure Migrate, is used as a DR tool. If you want to replicate the data centers, or if you want to replicate the servers to have a disaster recovery, then we use Azure Site Recovery. So Azure Migrate is not the right tool for performing your disaster recovery related activities.
Got it, sir. Yeah.
So let's try to access it now. Okay, so boot diagnostic is completely blank. Okay. So while we need to troubleshoot this server, why it's not coming up. Okay. What I'll do is
Yes, sir.
I'll do this troubleshooting offline, and if I come across any solutions, I'll let you know. Okay, over a message what we can
So
do.
yes, sir. Sure. Maybe it will take some time because some other troubleshoot steps we require. Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you understood what exactly we did. It was a very long session because we started at 4:30. It's almost 9:15 now. More than four and
Uh,
a half hours.
So because I have experience in previously, so I can understand easily this concept and interesting also
Yes.
because it's interesting and it's we need lot of skills and sir, what is the skills we require while migrating database or any other some other file share database like that. So is it require any other skills, DB related skills to migrate on premises to Azure? In that case,
So it is, if you want to migrate the SQL databases to Azure, it is good to have SQL skills, but even if you don't have SQL skills, that's absolutely fine. You can always have someone from the SQL team sitting with you during the migration, because we never know what type of issues we may come across when we are migrating the databases. So sometimes, let's say if you're migrating databases with the help of DMA, which is Data Migration Assistant, the Data Migration Assistant clearly tells us if there are any issues when we are performing any migrations. Okay, so those issues might be related to any SQL related things like stored procedures or some primary key. So these are the terms which a SQL guy can understand very easily than us. In case if you have knowledge of SQL, then that's well and good. If you don't, then it's always better to have these people on the call when you're doing this migration.
sir, one last question, sir.
Mhm.
So we have configured virtual switch. In that case, once we create in this, once we configure the Hyper-V host, we need to create this virtual switch to communicate our appliance or maybe on a web server like that, right? Sir?
Yes, yeah, yes,
Yeah. In that case, we have provided IP of one 172.16.21.1 for
yes,
switch IP.
right.
Okay. Apart from that, is there any other configuration required for that internal switch?
No, so you don't need anything else because see, understand why do we need that virtual switch? So virtual switch acts as a mediator to import and export, or to traverse the traffic from one server to another server. So you will create a lot of virtual machines on your Hyper-V host. But without a virtual switch, those virtual machines will not be able to speak with each other. They will not be able to speak with your Hyper-V host, and they will not be able to even speak with your internal servers. So when you create a virtual switch, that virtual switch acts as a mediator for the communication.
Okay. Yes, sir. After creating Hyper-V host, we need to create the virtual switch. Later,
There are
we have to create.
Yeah, so there are three steps that are involved. One is to create a virtual switch, number one. Second one, when you create a virtual switch, it actually creates a it actually creates a network adapter in your Hyper-V host. You have to assign you have to assign a IP address, not public. You have to assign a private IP address to that switch. Okay. And when you assign a private IP address to that switch, make sure that that IP address starts with one. So in our case, we gave 172.16.21.1. Okay. So you have to make sure that that IP address is one, because whenever we assign any gateway IP address, that gateway IP address always starts with one. Okay. So that is another thing. Third thing is, once you assign IP address to your let's say virtual switch network adapter, you have to also create a NAT rule. Okay. This NAT rule will basically tell the virtual switch that the communication has the internal communication within the Hyper-V virtual machine will happen within this IP address range.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So all the commands. So since we have done everything from scratch, you will find all these steps in the video.
Yes, sir. Oh, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions for me before we
No, sir.
actually wrap up?
Thank you so much, sir, for your time, because it's much experience we needed for this explanation, and uh, to give the practical experience to other guys. That should lot of dedication required, because it's not possible. Mostly, it's not possible because I'm seeing this such a experience in development. It's looking like it's a production environment. Thank you so much, sir, because uh, it's a great experience for me.
Yeah, that was really good actually. Uh, but honestly, if I tell you, we have been taking these sessions for almost 4, 5, 6 months, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. But as I told during the initial talks, that I can only spare time when I'm free from my regular sessions, and this was one of the days that I was free, and I'm really sorry for extending for so many
No,
days.
no, sir. Not no, no, sir. Because I'm practicing myself in office sometime, or in weekend, 1 2 hours like that. So I'm in between. In between, I'm taking some other self training. So that will help, because to understand this migration. Because
Yeah, and one more thing, that in case if you think that there is some service on which you want some explanation, or there are some services which you want to learn in future, you can always ping me, and based on my bandwidth, we can connect, and I'll try to explain you those services if I personally don't know those services.
sir, do you have any plan to conduct more online sessions? So, because my friends from Bangalore or Hyderabad, they are waiting such type of trainings, because there are a lot of people who are waiting for a right person to get into this field and get into the explore and different technologies. So they are ready to spend their time, because based on your because I already asked you also, because so if you have any planning for the planning, so I will arrange people, so dedicated people, those who are waiting and those who are ready to learn and ready to spend some time to learn.
No, the problem with the online session is that uh, due to the ongoing session. So from 18th January onwards, my both the days would be allocated. For example, the Saturday will be allocated for the Azure Administrator batch, and on Sunday, I will be completely allocated for the Azure Architect guys. So I will be spending both of my days teaching Azure to the newcomers as well as for the architect guys. So it's really hard for conducting any online sessions now, but maybe in future, if there are any plans of coming up with any online sessions, then I'll obviously post it on Cloud Travelers, and you can come to know, and then you can refer them. okay, you can let them know that yes, so and so batch is going to start, and if anyone wants to join, then they can join. But right now, it's it's really hard to conduct any online sessions.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
No problem, sir. It was really nice teaching you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I enjoyed a lot and I learned a lot of